So welcome everyone to another exciting and knowledge-rich Tech for Good Knowledge Forum, a presentation of the Immersive Learning Research Network, a donation and volunteer-driven 501c3 United States-based nonprofit organization serving the global public good. This webinar is part of iLearn's ongoing effort to showcase immersive learning experiences that help fulfill United Nations Sustainable Development Goals through our Tech for Good conference theme and our greater nonprofit mission to co-create the professional association, advancing the quality of immersive learning to benefit humanity and our world. So today's webinar is a kind of panel. We have our three distinguished guests. They're innovators, scholars, community leaders. So we have this webinar to examine innovation in Nigerian education from these three lenses: training, learning, and research. In this first part of the webinar, Toks Bakare will talk about her work from a training perspective using VR as a social advocacy tool. Then Judith Okonkwo will walk us through her work using VR for learning in the public secondary school system. And finally, in the last part of the session, Eugene Ohu shares his work on using the perspective-taking capabilities of virtual reality to elicit greater empathy and compassion. So the title of this Unlikely XR, Changing the Status Quo of Nigerian Education webinar. And before I turn over the show to our featured speakers, I'd like to quickly thank our iLearn 2024 conference and event sponsors and volunteers from the University of Glasgow, University of St. Andrews, the Glasgow School of Arts, Westminster University, the Barbara Bush Foundation for Family Literacy, Goethe University, Harvard University, the University of Montana, Graz University of Technology, the New School in New York, Columbia University, and California Polytechnic State University. There are others, but that's the ones for today. So our 10th annual international conference this June is going to be a landmark occasion for our network and our partners. Thank you all for your co-design efforts and your service to our mission. Second, to our live audience, thank you so much for coming. Everyone's welcome to introduce themselves here on chat and make comments, drop links to relevant content, and interact in the back channel. Please keep your comments relevant to immersive learning and respectful of our guests. Thank you for being active and kind. And if you have questions for our webinar guests, please feel to use the Q&A section, and we'll try to facilitate those if we have time at the end of the presentation. And then finally, if you're watching our webinar recording, thanks for coming to and following this iLearn YouTube channel. Please, everybody subscribe, and that'll help us reach our goals also. Thank you very much. Toks, sorry. I believe you are up first.
Yes, indeed. Thank you so much, Jonathan. Hi, everybody. I'm Toks Bakare. I founded AskToks.com, a small organization working with neurodiverse children, training tutors in applied behavior analysis, and doing advocacy work for inclusive education in Nigeria as well. So I currently live in DC. In the US, and continue to wear several different hats in my career. But yes, so today, as Jonathan mentioned, I have presenting with me two incredible humans, Judith and Dr. Eugene. But right, I will start with my first half. Let me just share my screen for you. There we go. Can I get a thumbs up if I'm sharing the right screen? Yes, lovely. Thank you, Eugene. Right, so most of you are likely to be virtual reality enthusiasts already, and you're probably thinking quite broadly about how VR is used in different ways. And so we are really excited to share our work with you today, and we hope that this might help you think even more outside of the box about unlikely ways XR technology is used for good in this world. And so with that, our first presentation takes us into 8 primary schools in Lagos, Abuja, and in Enugu, Nigeria. There's one school in Enugu, Nigeria. like in many parts of the world, just to set a little bit of context for you, where there is significant stigma associated with neurodiversity, quality inclusive education for children on the autism spectrum, for example, is typically severely under-resourced. And it is the same in this region as well of Nigeria. In 2017, researchers, Odunsi and peers, looking at how ASD is understood among teachers in Nigeria, they found that it's often conceptualized quite negatively, with those affected being affected by the condition kind of frequently being considered as witches or possessed. To use their words. So as you can imagine, when these kinds of views are held by educators, it can lead to stigmatization, discrimination, and that leads to inconsistencies in how teachers understand and respond to the educational needs of the children in their class. So to begin to change conceptions of ASD, I led a small team that set out to deliver an experience that leads to better attitudes and behaviors towards neurodiversity. We really believe that this can reduce the associated stigma and promote pro-social behaviors among teachers. And you'll see kind of in the reactions what that looks like. So over a period of 2 months, it was about 2 months, we went to all the schools that we had relationships with. So these were schools where we were working already with at least one child on the autism spectrum. And so it also meant that these were schools where there was some level of social inclusion kind of already taking place. I like to tell the story of Mrs. Kemi. This is she. She's a passionate kind of grade 1 teacher. She's early to mid-career. She had been at the school for about 4 years at the time when we visited. Mrs. Kemi had never had any formal training in special education, so very typical of all of the teachers that we and educators that we came across. She hadn't had any training in working with neurodiverse learners at all. But she did teach a class of about 15, similar to the images you can see on the screen here, including 2 neurodivergent children. So one morning, I went to Mrs. Kemi during snack time. I pulled her aside and I spoke to her for just a few minutes about what she was just about to experience. And then I just gave her the headset. And when Mrs. Kemi kind of took off the headset, the look in her eyes was one of shock and sadness and deep concern. Yeah. She was particularly kind of moved by the sounds and of the children, of the child's breathing, and the kind of overwhelming sort of visual stimulus in the experience as well. And it was as though for the very first time, she was understanding that what to her felt like or looked like tantrum behavior in her classroom, perhaps was actually as a result of the child going through some distress, and perhaps this was the stress the child was feeling was actually triggered by things happening in her classroom, like the songs that she played, and things like that. And she became really curious and asked a lot of questions, like, oh, is this what the child is really going through? Why is he breathing like this? And that was really interesting to me, that reaction. And she also learned 3 things. So she learned 3 calming techniques for sensory overload, which I'll talk about in a minute or so. So now you just saw Mrs. Kemi with I think it's a first generation Oculus headset, and Judith, you can correct me if I'm wrong on that one. But for most of what we were doing, we also used these Google Cardboard devices and a phone to play a 2-minute video, just like a smartphone and a Google Cardboard, to play a 2-minute 360 video. Now, the experience was created by the UK National Autistic Society, and it's publicly available on YouTube. I can share a link with you if you like. You just need to search for Autism TMI 360, so I can share all that. Happy to do so. The VR experience involves a boy and his mother. So this is what they're seeing in the headset. It's a boy and his mother. It's set in a UK shopping mall. As I said, it's just about 2 minutes, and it's a really intense perceptual experience where you kind of you see unusually vibrant colors, so like balloons and things look unusually vibrant. There's lots of flashing lights. You hear sounds in a really unusual way. And so to promote, so that was the experience itself, but then also to promote transfer from VR to the real world for these teachers. In a debrief shortly after they've removed the headset, we highlighted the 3 calming strategies that were also demonstrated in the experience. So and these are things that the teachers all found that would be really useful in the classroom. So the strategies were helping the child count on fingers, for example. You see the child deep breathing, so that's a strategy you can help use with the child, and then changing physical locations to take the child out of the classroom, for example, so to somewhere that might be calmer. So those were 3 strategies that in the experience itself, it wasn't like, here, we're here to train you on how to do this. Actually, the teachers kind of pulled those experiences and those strategies out of the 2-minute video on their own, and then we had a discussion around it. So that was really also almost like a secondary effect of this. So that was really cool to see. The reactions to the experience were varied, as you can imagine, and Eugene will talk a little bit more about compassion in his own research. So I won't go too far into that. But in addition to the compassion, much like Mrs. Kemi's reaction, teachers were visibly moved, of course. Some were overwhelmed. We also saw a lot of curiosity, as I mentioned, and understanding. Some teachers wondered if this was how children on the spectrum felt all the time, for example. So we got questions like that. There was also, for some, this aha moment. One teacher suddenly recalled a child in their class who escapes from the classroom during noisy activities and like kind of just runs out of the classroom. And having had this experience, this teacher was now like, I think I might understand what's going on, why they keep running out of the classroom. And so that was really interesting to see as well, and really, really helpful for the teachers. Many educators did another step further, which I really liked, which was they asked about triggers and other techniques that they could use to support a child who's experiencing sensory overload. And yet some others even wanted to leap into action. So they were advocating for other staff members to experience a video, and learn how to support the child and manage these kinds of situations. So you may not be able, it might be a bit small to see, but one of those quotes in pink there says, all teachers should have a one-on-one with this virtual stuff. It's really necessary because it helps a teacher to understand where the child is coming from and how to help the child. And that's a direct quote from one of the teachers we worked with. And I really, really love that sentiment. And I was like, yes, I will. If you let me pull them out of class, I will do it with all the teachers, no problem. Right. So in conclusion, I think some of the lessons that we learned, I'll just wrap this up. This wasn't training in the typical sense where you think of teacher PD, where you think of seat time and you think of, the credits you can earn towards special education, for example, or inclusive teaching. Yet we reached hundreds of educators and saw really positive reactions to the experience, including the asking of more questions, that curiosity about behavior, seeking practical tools, which is so important. And Yeah, and so for us, that certainly is pro-social behavior, and a lot of empathy, of course, towards the children. So we know that immersive experiences are effective at promoting social inclusion among teachers of neurodivergent children in West Africa. And we do acknowledge that while our participants were primed for this because, you know, they had already been working in sort of inclusive education settings, they didn't have any formal training. And so we're really pleased to kind of see the next level that they wanted to take their sort of understanding of the condition to on their own. So that's really good. And then it is clear to us that VR experiences, this particular experience was doing something more than I think what we could have done on our own through just telling the story of the kind of children that we work with and kind of just advocating with our voice. It was crossing language barriers. So we spoke to people for whom like English is not their first language. In fact, it's not even like their second or third or anywhere on their language list. But they were still able to, you know, recall and connect and have that curiosity as well. So, and then ask for help when where they saw the need. So that was really phenomenal. Our goal in the future is to create a range of experiences that are culturally relevant for globally underserved populations. That's really, really the goal, because these experiences are so powerful and they do so much good almost without trying. So yeah, so thank you so much for your time, everyone, listening to my presentation. And with that, I will turn it over to Judith, who's going to show you some amazing videos of this, of not my work, but of her work in action. So really excited for you to see that.
Fantastic. Thank you, Toks.
Thank you, Toks. Always fabulous to listen to your amazing work. Hello, everybody. I'm Judith Okonkwo. I'm so pleased to be here doing this webinar for Ireland. The work you do is wonderful. So thank you for bringing us all together all over the world to really convene and find ways to work together and make the world better with these technologies. I'm going to talk about some of the work that we are doing, we have done. An initiative of ours called VR for Schools. As Toks said, I'm going to show for a bit first by playing a video, and then I'll talk a little bit about what it's been like in practice. So bear with me, I'm going to do the share screen thing, and it's been a little bit fiddly today, but hopefully it will go off without a hitch. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes, looking good.
Okay.
We are Emisi 3D, we're an extended reality creation lab based in Lagos, Nigeria, and we're working to develop the ecosystem for augmented virtual and mixed reality. Here in Lagos,
I'm sorry, just give me 1 second to get that going again.
And across the African continent. We're doing this because we believe that these technologies are tools that can be used to solve local challenges in unprecedented ways. Let's consider virtual reality. This is a technology that allows you to completely immerse the audience in whatever environment you'd like via a headset which they wear. This gives you a lot of scope in terms of creativity for what you are able to create for consumers. The global statistics for education are concerning. Over 263 million children are out of school. Over 1 billion children do not have access to quality education. And when we come to Nigeria specifically, with the highest number of children out of school for any one country in the world, 13.2 million, it's even more shocking. And then there are the things that we know. That if you go into the average public school, the class size might on average be between 70 and 90 students. That learning outcomes have been dropping. That we have a lot of work to do. Here's why I'm so excited about these exponential technologies. Consider the public school I described, a class size of perhaps 80 students, basic infrastructure, So chairs, tables, a whiteboard, and markers. No labs for the sciences, maybe? No funds for field trips? But what if that school had a virtual reality lab? One room that you could go into with your students, and if they can't do experiments in a chemistry lab, they can do them virtually. If they can't travel on field trips, in VR, they can go and explore the pyramids of Egypt, or the Eiffel Tower, or even the solar system. All of a sudden, experiences for learning that were not viable from a financial point of view can now be made available to these students. And it's not just fun. Along with much more enjoyable learning experiences for students, preliminary research has shown that retention can be improved by up to a factor of 3 using virtual reality. Combine this with the known benefits of experiential learning and you can see the potential. Here in Nigeria, we have the opportunity to begin to bridge the gap between the quality of education that is provided in our elite private schools and what we have in the public school system.
What role I feel for those, because immediately I was looking through it, I saw that it enhances my assimilation of the topic. So number one role of VR is that it actually enhances learning in students.
It has been a new development in the school system, which I see very educative and nice for students to be in the world of what they are being taught. There's nothing as good as a child being in the position to be able to feel whatever is being taught.
We hope you'll join us in using these technologies to prepare our young people for the world of tomorrow. There are several ways in which you can incorporate virtual reality into your institution. You might decide to set up a virtual reality lab for your school, or perhaps you want to introduce it into your school curriculum and actually teach the technology. Or you might decide that you want to enhance the current teaching of subjects by introducing VR as a learning aid. Whichever path you choose, we're here to help. That's it from us. Take it.
And I'll stop there with the video. Okay, so I just want to talk a little bit about what I showed you. Okay, yes, just making sure me and the screen are okay. But yes, that video is sort of like highlights the work that we've been doing over the years, and it's actually quite a few years old. It's on YouTube if you want to watch it again and maybe catch some of the bits in more detail. But what was really excited for us in our work, I mean, we started our lab in 2016 and our remit was very clear. We wanted to make sure that there were access to the technologies on the African continent and to be sure that Africans could participate in reaping the benefits of these technologies in various sectors, as well as being able to inform what the technologies will be globally. Alongside this, for us, a very core use case had always been, well, what are the grand challenges locally that we think we can tackle with this technology? And a very early one for me was education. I mean, you would have seen in the video, sort of like the traditional classroom, where you're really, really limited in terms of the physical resources available, the infrastructure, and the demands on the teacher are incredible. I mean, that class of 70 to 80, everything is pen and paper or pencil and paper, and there's just a single teacher. I till this day do not know how they do it, but somehow they try. And for us, the question was always, well, what is it that we can do to make things better for them? It wasn't a situation of telling them like, hey, we think this technologies will work for you. Instead, we did the reverse. We partnered with a local junior secondary school. So that's students who are roughly about 10 or 11 years old to about 13, 14. And with that particular school, we spent a lot of time building relationships with the leadership, with the principal and the vice principal. You saw the vice principal in the video. And then with them, we were able to put together what I call sort of like our ambassadors. And these were a group of 10 teachers who they thought might be interested in engaging. We had those teachers come and spend time in our lab and quite literally said, play with the technology. You know, we would sort of like schedule these workshop sessions for them. And the school's not too far away from our lab. It's about 5-10 minutes away. They would come in, they would have lunch, they would like work with the headsets, they would try out different experiences. And after a couple of those sessions, we said to them, well, how do you think this can help you? Would it be useful in the classroom? And they identified 3 subject areas in which they thought it could make a real difference for their teaching. Basic mathematics, basic science, and physical and health education. And the things they wanted to see done sort of like really range. So for example, for the physical and health education teacher, who's another teacher that you saw in the video, she said, you know, ideally, I would love to be able to take my my students to a hospital. We're teaching them about non-communicable diseases, but I'd love for them to be able to go to a hospital and speak with a doctor, but we obviously can't afford to do that. And I was like, well, okay, well, what if we take a 360 camera into a hospital and sort of like capture that for you? And then, you know, the students can have that experience in their headset. Might that sort of like bridge the gap? For the teacher who was doing mathematics, she was like, I'm teaching the students algebraic expressions next term, and they always struggle with that. They feel it's too abstract. What can we do so that they can start to experience it and see it applied in everyday life? And so we created like gamified scenarios where it was like, you know, doing sort of like little mathematical games with a fruit seller on the street, for example, but things that were familiar to the students to sort of like build that knowledge and understanding. And we were able to build 3 prototypes for the VR experiences that attended to the subject areas that the teachers were interested in with the support of UNICEF in 2019. And that's work where we're hoping to sort of like build further on that and be able to do actual studies where we can refine those prototypes. And that prototype development work, I should say, was a really iterative process where we're working hand in hand with the teachers constantly, and luckily with the students, in the sense that we got to spend time in the school with the teachers, create based on the curriculum and their teaching notes and whatever improvements that they wanted to see, really like leveraging them as subject matter experts, and then creating and then going back into the school to test both to the teachers and the students. So a real co-creation process to get to where we are. In terms of next steps, I mean, I'm a huge advocate for these technologies and actually really bridging the gap in resource-constrained environments like the one you saw. I think it can be transformational. And I think it's likely sort of like one of the few ways in which it would be possible to achieve SDG 4 in such an environment, that it has to be that sort of radical approach. But we know that for that to happen, we have to have empirical evidence to support the use case. And so for us, that will be the next step. Can we actually conduct a study over time where we're able to demonstrate the impact on learning outcomes, which of course we hope will be positive, but we must test first and find out. And then that data we can then take to the people who advocate for where education dollars should go to, and hopefully we'll start to see more of this happening across the country and across the region. Okay, that's it for me. Thank you. So now I'm super excited to hand over to Eugene, who is doing the most incredible work at the Lagos Business School, where he has a virtual human-computer interaction lab that's doing research that I can't wait for you to hear about.
Thank you very much, Judith. Fantastic. And it's a privilege to be with both Judith and Toks. Thanks for putting this together. And Jonathan, thanks for having us. So my name is Eugene Ohu. I work at the Lagos Business School and I run a lab, virtual reality lab. We call it the Virtual Human Computer Interaction Lab. My encounter with VR started in 2018 because my research is human-computer interaction. Okay, so while I have always been concerned about the impacts of technology on people, I've also been very interested in how to deploy technology effectively, particularly for human flourishing. So that was my introduction into VR. So now when people come to the lab, they have different ideas about what VR is. So Judith was really just talking about finding empirical support for why VR works. I'll get to that. So people have different ideas of VR. Some think it's for gaming. So anyway, we don't bother explaining anything to you. So when the people come to the lab, the first experience we give them is called Richie's Plank. So for the benefit of those who haven't had this experience, so you get into VRO, you find yourself on the ground floor of a building, and behind you there's an elevator. So you get into the elevator, you push the button, and it takes you to the top floor of a very high-rise building. And then you have all the sounds with a cling, the elevator door opens, and then there is a piece of wood sticking out, hanging over nothing. Okay, and then you're supposed to walk to the end of the plank. Now, to complete the illusion, we actually have a physical plank in the lab with uneven surfaces. So we get you to walk to the end. And I mean, I work in a business school, so you don't have children there. You have adults, macho men, big women who think nothing can touch them. But we've had all sorts of experiences. So you have people who say, oh, I can't do this. Okay. Many start by saying it's nothing. And then we've had terrifying experiences. And then I'm going to tell you one piece of it. In December, we had somebody faint. Okay, so it was a scary moment. So now I can talk about it because, okay, fine, he survived. Okay, somebody fainted. So, but when they're having this experience, they get to the middle of the plank, they're saying, either they're calling my name or the name of it or any of my colleagues in the lab. I know I'm in the lab. I know this is not real. I know it's not real. Yeah, it's not real. So walk to the end. But I can't. I know it's not real. Walk to the end. I can't. So the reason we give them this is you need an experience like this to explain to people, show people how powerful VRO is. Okay, so that you can say that although it's a virtual experience, the impact is real. I mean, we've done a study when we had to strap heart rate monitor on them while they are undergoing this experience. So many times the facial experience, the bravado you see has nothing to do with what we're measuring. So sometimes we have the person monitoring saying, get that guy off the plank. Okay, so it's very interesting. So the experience, the experience is virtual, the impact is real. And this is what fascinates us about virtual reality, really. I mean, there's something we say in the lab, and then Judith made an allusion to it. We say that virtual reality allows us to do dangerous things safely and expensive things cheaply. So this ability is what we're then taking advantage of in perspective taking. In the richest plank experience, you're able to be transported to another place. What if that other place is another person's experience, another person's reality, another person's life? So the perspective taking ability of virtual reality is one of the things we've been studying since 2020 and up to date. So we have 2 projects ongoing. So that takes me to the next slide, where I just describe some of the things we're doing. One project we've been doing since 2020, first in Lagos and now across 2 countries, Nigeria and Kenya, is teaching empathy and compassion using virtual reality games. Okay, so there are 2 parts to this study. So our lab is we're doing both basic research and applied research. Basic in the sense that we're also trying to see, we know that VRO is powerful. What works? Under what conditions do they work? So what's the best way to get this? For example, both Toks and Judith talked about the Google Cardboard, for instance, and I'm going to talk about it because one of the things we're also seeing, knowing that we are in Africa and these things are not cheap. So if we can have the same effect using Google Cardboard as you will get using a HMD like Quest 2, 3, okay, there is room for scalability. So I'm going to focus on study 2, which is whether playing a VRO game depicting ethnic discrimination can lead to perspective taking, hence increased empathy and compassion. The background to this is our reality in Nigeria, and we're also doing this study in Kenya. So you can say in much of Africa, there are many ethnic groups. And when you have different groups, you have the in-group, out-group mentality. And one negative consequence of this would be bias, stereotypes, preference for your own group, and then discrimination towards the others. So we're trying to see if, because VRO allows you to take the perspective of another person, what if I'm able to embody someone from another ethnic group and experience discrimination as that person? Would that in real life change my attitude, specifically empathy and compassion towards someone from that ethnic group? And that's what we were doing. And then the participants in our study are teenagers, or adolescents, 13 to 18 years old. And we have different experimental conditions. What do I mean? So you say we're comparing between embodiment and observation. So what do we call embodiment? In the embodiment is, okay, so VR allows you to see your avatar. I have a hand, this is me, I am wearing these clothes, I belong to this ethnic group, I can see myself. First person perspective, where you have agency, compared to the condition we call observe, which is simply seeing something from a third person perspective happening. We're comparing these two to see both of them in VRO. So the experience you would have in a typical cardboard, you can call observe because there are no controllers, you're simply watching this. One of the reasons we are interested in comparing these two conditions is if observe is as powerful as embody in eliciting empathy and compassion, well, you have a very interesting use case for cardboard, which is what is more affordable for many people here, okay? And then we have different evaluation methods. So we test the empathy and compassion before the experience, immediately after the experience, 2 months after, 4 months after, 6 months after, without repeating the experience in order to check for persistence of effects. So the outcome is increased empathy and compassion, and the goal is to contribute to the secondary school curriculum. So we're working with secondary schools in Lagos, in Nasarawa. So Lagos and Nasarawa are two different. Lagos in the west, Nasarawa is north central in Nigeria. And then in Kenya, we're working in Nairobi and Mombasa, working in with schools. And if this works, well, the idea is, well, VR being so powerful can make a contribution to the civic education in order to increase empathy and compassion. And then there are many other things that we are doing. Okay, so this is just to explain one project. I mean, if VR works to increase empathy and compassion, another study we're doing is mental health implications of this use. For example, there's a lot of stigma in this part, conditions such as depression, to have open conversations about this, or to have a first-person experience of depression. But of course, I mean, I also have to make my employers happy, who have been very tolerant of my research. So I'm in a business school, so we also develop applications, simulations that are used in the classroom. So since many of the things we are testing or trying to do don't exist off the shelf, we develop everything in-house in the lab. Okay, so it's a research lab. We have a psychologist, communication, international relations. We have VR developers. And then, so in the lab, there are about 8 people, and then we'll have 4 other people to whom we outsource things, and then we develop in open source, Blender, and then Unreal Engine and Unity. All right, so I'm going to leave it here. Nice to be here.
Fantastic. Wow. Thank you, all 3 of you, so much. This was just this is great. Rich, incredible presentations, everyone. Thank you. Boy, I've been scribbling notes down for constantly. This just like really thoughtful, provocative, action research, outcome-oriented, evidence-based. Really, really incredible. Thank you so much. I don't know where to start. I guess I could just dive right into the chat and save some of my comments while I try and get my head around it. Like really, like so many great points here, all 3 of you. But Tomi Gungmaken said, "Hi, Toks. I wanted to commend you on your excellent advocacy work so far," and she's curious about your timeline for initiating the goals that you recently mentioned, the scope of your intended coverage. Could you provide some insight into those plans?
Yeah, Thank you, Tomi. It's a great question. Definitely whenever we go into the community and we're sharing information, we're always thinking about what more can we be doing, and what does it take to do that more. So in terms of building new and creating new experiences, we don't have a particular timeline for that, because that also depends on, things like the funding that we get to do that and things like that. So we don't have a timeline for when that will be done. But we continue to talk about the work that we do. We continue to look for partners who are interested to work with us. And when the magic, all comes together in the universe, we'll be able to take it to that next level. So thank you so much for that question.
Good answer. Yeah, it's very, very the practicalities. I love the sort of supply chains of that you need to kind of consider. One of the things I wanted to ask maybe all three of you was, just on that, I guess, in terms of where there's so much need and there's so many people who would love to get into this, how do you start? Or where does the support supply, like finding the need, finding the solution, kind of, how does that all grow for you? Like, what do you?
Yeah, Judith is the ecosystem builder, so I will definitely divert to Judith. But I mean, for me, this was work that I was already doing, right? So it was work, I was working with children, and I was seeing teachers every day, and I was having to talk to them about, okay, can we be a little bit more patient when this is happening, and things like that. So I was already in that space of exposing teachers to the experiences of the children I was working with, and helping them understand their children better and communicate with their children better, and all of that. And so the VR experience for me was a tool to do the things that I was doing already really effectively. So I wasn't looking for how to use VR. It came, the experience showed up, and I was like, yes, this is going to do what I need it to do, what I've been trying to do even better. So yeah, the VR experience itself was almost like a secondary thing that came out of the work that I was already doing and the purpose that was already there.
Right.
If that makes sense. But yes, Judith, please tell us, how do you start?
Laughing out loud here, but I think you just begin with whatever you have, I think would be the way to describe it. Whenever I'm telling people about getting the lab started, I really let them know that it was just me going on Amazon and ordering one computer, and buying a few books, and I got a free Samsung Gear VR because of my mobile phone company then in the UK was giving them out. So, I took that and I set up shop in a hub and just kind of like built it out from there. And I think, if you're really sort of like passionate about it, one thing I will say about the space that we're in and these technologies is that globally, the community, they were pretty open-armed in 2016 when I was starting out, because really it was that learning from YouTube or whatever else you could find, or reaching out to people on LinkedIn that you've never met before. And they would say, yeah, I'll get on a Skype call with you and I'll introduce you to, so-and-so of this community, and just building up from there. And bringing that home to Nigeria, I mean, it's been an absolute privilege to work with both Toks and Eugene on, on a number of their projects. Collaboration, I think, is at the heart of what we're doing in our ecosystem, because we understand that we're on the back foot, let's be honest, compared to the rest of the world. We have a heck of a lot to get done. And we're certainly going to get further together, but kind of like building that support. It's also about taking that ecosystem approach. So even with the work that we're doing in education and with VR for schools, it's always been sort of like really holistic, looking at the whole ecosystem. Yes, we definitely want to be able to have applications of these technologies in society, But alongside that, we must have the people who will be able to create those applications for us. And I know Eugene always talks about sort of like that huge talent gap that exists, you know, in Nigeria and across the continent, and what we do about it. And so for us, a very active part of our work is developing local talent, right? So that when we need to build, we can build locally, that they can be people who understand exactly what our peculiar situations are when they're creating. But yeah, really, really just start with everything and then look widely for opportunities. The work that we were able to do, the major chunk of the work with VR of schools where we're actually creating those prototypes was with a grant from the UNICEF Innovation Fund. And I actually hadn't heard about it, but I was very lucky that somebody had heard about me in the UN, and I'd reached out and said, hey, have you seen this? Would you like to apply for it? And, you know, and kind of like encouraged me to do so. And I think now there's sort of like more information about opportunities, but I think it's up to us to that know about them, to tell people about them. And hopefully more and more will start being geo-blocked and be available to people all over the world.
Yeah, fantastic. Wow. So many the people who are on the ground, like Toks, like in a situation where there's a community in need, the connecting and working with them, this co-design thing, this networking thing, this ecosystem thing is such a big part of it. But no matter where you are in that, like for people to try to reach out and come together, with the focus and the expertise, like Dr. Eugene was like laying out there, we need that rigor and we need that academic understanding, and the working closely with the state to integrate things into the curriculum, I thought was brilliant as an exemplar. So that's very cool. Like really amazing work that you've done. I've done some work here in Montana with the Native American reservations, and lots of good examples that you have that I can share and shine light and connect as well through some of that work. So yeah, there's a lot you're leaders in what you're doing. So thank you so much for sharing that. I have personal gratitude.
That's the goal. Thank you, Jonathan. Yeah, please do share, you know, all of these things. If we can have people all over the world, you know, in their little in wherever they are in their little environments, their little regions and everything, like replicating this, or trying these techniques, trying to, you know, working with their teachers, you know, then we would love that. Yeah, I think that's the way to do this, to spread the good work into all of the farthest reaches of the world.
Right? Yeah, thanks, Toks. We'll definitely do that. It looks like yeah, there's a question. I'm sorry if I Oluwatobi Babalola.
Loba. Yeah.
Yeah. And they ask, hi, everyone. I'm a master's student of architecture at the University of Waterloo, and I'm looking to explore the possibilities of AR, VR, XR, learning and presenting ideas in architecture for my thesis. I need a strong direction, a cause worth pursuing to research in, and potentially follow through with building a few prototypes. I'd really appreciate your advice. It is the first time I'm hearing about empathy and compassion with VR, which I think is great. Thank you. Mel Slater is definitely one person I would take a look at in terms of his pioneering work. In terms of, but there's many others. Dr. Eugene Ohu, you had quite a bit around that area. What advice might you give?
Toby Lover, thanks for being here. But I would say let's talk, okay? Let's talk, because it's not very clear how much of VRO you know in terms of the technical aspect. Certainly you have something which is very important in VR, which is a domain expertise. Okay, so you're an architect, So I don't understand architecture to know what might be interesting for an architect, but you have the domain expertise. So maybe if we get in touch, we'll talk and see. For example, one of our VRO developers, one of our best VRO developers, I think, is an architect. So he brings the architectural understanding, the use of space, the UX design that comes naturally to them into VRO. But from a research perspective, until I understand a bit more what might be architectural questions there, okay. I'm not sure that's very helpful, but at this moment, I need more information.
But that was well fielded.
I'll type my email in the chat if that's helpful.
Yes, thank you so much. Yes, I learn as a network is trying to address this interdisciplinary issue. And you know, we've sort of got this knowledge tree that we've sort of conjured, where the trunk of the tree is sort of the foundations of immersive learning, being the computer science, like the hardware and software that you need to know. There's usually an interface, although you can immerse without digital stuff. There's the game design or the UX, and then there's the learning sciences. So you have to have an immersive experience. It needs to have engagement in a certain way, and it needs to be grounded in the pedagogy or the psychology of what it is you're learning. And that's the core of immersive learning. But then it's applied to all these different areas, like you were saying, Eugene. Architecture. You need to have an architect to understand how you would really best apply that through an architectural way. So we have these 10 sort of branches on this knowledge tree: medical education and healthcare, nature and environmental sciences, workforce and industry. Those are all expert domains of application for using these things. And those are the tracks of our conference, or the houses that we have. Yeah, we don't have a house of architecture, but maybe there will be one someday. So
I wanted to jump in, if that's okay, just to say to Oluwatobi Loba as well, that if you're interested, so one of the things we do, trainings and hackathons sort of like across the continent to encourage people to acquire skills and apply those skills. And sort of like the winning team in Nigeria of the last edition, we're actually a team of architects. And so they're looking at using the technology to improve architecture education in tertiary institutions. And if you'd like to speak to them or connect with them, then please let me know and I can connect you so you can find out a little bit about what they're doing at the University of Lagos.
Nice. Yeah, that's great. One book, Christopher Alexander's A Pattern Language, is a great book on architecture that intersects with virtual and immersive environments. It's also a nice little coffee table book for if you're interested in decorating or thinking about immersive spaces. It's but anyways, that's just a random thing. So yeah, any other questions? Let's see, did we get any others? I think that's it. Boy, what else? I just had some notes here. Eugene, I'm definitely gonna tag you on X, or formerly Twitter. But the use of the evidence use cases, working with students and teachers. I love the Ritchie's plank, the elevator use of that. I had not actually, I've played with that a number of times, but had not come up with a way to apply it. And like you said that, I was like, oh my gosh, that's such a great use of that. What advice might we have to for people who are what tools or what resources might they use to get started, if there anybody out there, I guess. And then we'll try and do some final words and close the webinar. What do you think?
Well, I'll jump in. I would say you're very lucky if you're starting now. Well, luckier than people were 10 years ago because there are a whole bunch of resources available online. So hopefully you're somewhere where you've got electricity and the internet. Please get online. Go to YouTube, even go to the MCPD website. We have a list of some resources there. And I would definitely say join a community. If you're somewhere where there's an active sort of like XR community, then please join it. Particularly if you're in the African continent, please join one. There are such great repositories for all sorts of resources, from the people who will support you in your learning through to the tools that will be shared, that sort of thing. That would be my tip.
Excellent. Yeah.
So,
of course, go ahead.
Yeah, no, just to support Judith, it depends on what you want to learn. If it's the development itself, YouTube is a great resource. If you want to learn Blender, YouTube is a great resource. And then also, if you want to learn Unity, Unity itself provides learning materials, and so does Unreal Engine.
Yep. Excellent. And then I'd be remiss if I didn't give a plug to the Immersive Learning Research Network. So join our community. There's designers and educators, researchers, futurists, different people coming at this from different lenses. And immersive learning is very interdisciplinary. It takes a lot of different kinds of skills. You don't have to know them all yourself. So reach out to the people and get involved. You'll speak a common language to get projects done, and it's so fun to learn in these interdisciplinary international groups. So we hope that you'll check out iLearn, come to our conferences, participate in our webinars, join our houses, and help us to solve some of the world's problems along the way. So we really appreciate our guests today. Thank you so much again. This is really fantastic. I can't wait. I'm going to rewatch this as soon as it gets posted to YouTube, which will be shortly. It'll be usually within 24 hours after recording. We're up on YouTube. And yeah, thank you for being a part of this Tech for Good webinar today. So yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Jonathan, for having us. And I'll just quickly plug, I guess it's a quick shout out to my brother. It's his birthday today. And so yes, so I'm so happy to be doing this. He's definitely a huge inspiration. He's the eldest brother in my family, and he's been a huge inspiration. And so yes, happy birthday, Jude.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday to your brother.
Well, and thank you, Toks, for helping us for shepherding this and helping put this together. This has been fantastic. It's really great to collaborate with you. Yeah, what a great group. So this has just been wonderful. Please come back, all three of you.
Gladly. Gladly. Thanks for having us, John.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Jonathan. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Judith.
Yes, indeed.
Thanks.
All right. Well, I think that concludes it. Oh, there is one last question. We're not quite at the top of the hour. Deborah has a question. Hi, Toks. You mentioned that you work with children using XR. Please, what is the age range? Deborah is interested in early intervention for children with neurodevelopmental delays. How early can the device be used with children? Thank you.
That's a really great question. Thank you, Deborah. So I worked with the teachers who were working with the children. And as I was working with the children, I wasn't using VR with the children. So I believe right now our guidelines are around 8 and above years before using a device. But John, Judith, if you have any additional guidelines around.
Sorry, your voice kind of went in and out there for a second, Toks.
Yeah, it cut out a little bit at the end. But I think she was talking about if we had any additional information about the age guidelines for the use of the devices with children, and was suggesting 8, I think 10. And I think one thing that we're seeing with manufacturers like Meta is that they're now creating parental accounts. So just showing that there is that intent that, younger children, previously it was 13, can use the device. And it will at the end be at like parental discretion. I think we'll be seeing a lot of that.
Yeah, definitely an issue and ongoing. I mean, the neuroplasticity of children is well documented, and having people spend a lot of time with any kind of media, but particularly, the interactive media also definitely adds an impact. Any VR experience, generally the limitations are good, as from what I've seen. Like, people are not spending hours and hours in a VR headset. So usually they're targeted, they're smaller experiences within a greater curriculum. But yeah, with smaller children, I think I would be very cautious about the design and the length of time in the headset. Was that too mealy-mouthed? I don't know. I don't exactly know the numbers, but I would be very careful with small children, as any vulnerable population you should be. So, good question. All right, I think that's about it. It wraps it up. Are we ready to end the recording?
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.